With regard to Jstreet, Mark, I'm willing to put my experience on campus up there against anybody else's. I remind you that I've spoken or had speakers at more than 350 university campuses across several continents. It used to be that our most outspoken questioners at the conclusion of our comments would be members of Students for Justice for Palestine. It would be members of the Muslim Students Association. It might be members of Students Against Israeli Apartheid. Today, those students attend, but they are rendered silent because Jstreet students will do their bidding for them. Now, I'm urging members of American Jewry, and frankly people back home in Israel who perhaps are not as familiar with what goes on the ground, to check very, very carefully into the disparity between what may be espoused by Jeremy Ben-Ami and what is actually going on in the university dynamic, because it is not pro-Israel. It actually happens to be rabidly anti-Israel, and I don't use that phrase lightly. And I reserved judgment for a very long time about Jstreet, and I'll tell you why I've come to this judgment. Because I reviewed in full their recent policy briefing in Washington, D.C. And I listened very carefully. I don't know whether you attended, but I reviewed it on YouTube. And I listened to speaker after speaker espousing the importance and the righteousness of dismantling the Zionist entity, experiment, so on and so forth. That doesn't trouble me. What troubles me is the roar of the crowd following those comments. Now, when your constituents are roaring their applause and their approval for such a policy, you know the manner of the organization at its heart. That is very troubling. And my last point with regard to Jeremy Ben-Ami is this. He must not espouse a policy with which he himself will not have to live, the consequences of which he will not have to see borne out. And he should not presume that because, to go back to what I mentioned about the individual on the Hampshire College campus, he should not presume that because his father served in the Haganah, as he was always very, very swift to speak on, that he is qualified, therefore, or has earned his stripes, to use a different metaphor, to speak about the future of the State of Israel. And it's inappropriate for anybody to say, as he does, there is one way only forward, and it needs to be implemented now. I find that ridiculous, I find it presumptuous, and I find it very, very reprehensible. And the last point I will say is this, and it goes back to your question, Mark. Our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, love him or loathe him, and I'm not going to pass comment on that, certainly. He's my Prime Minister, and I'm not in the State of Israel, and I will not critique him, therefore. But I will tell you this. Members of diaspora Jewry are going to miss a communicator like that when he's gone. They will miss him, whether they support him or they don't support him. And when he came to speak to Congress and to express the concerns of the Israeli people and of the Israeli government vis-a-vis the deal with Iran, I was deeply, deeply proud and deeply ashamed of Jewish individuals such as Jeremy Ben-Ami, who released a press package saying, "No, Mr. Netanyahu, you do not speak for me." Well, Jeremy Ben-Ami, you certainly do not speak for me, I can assure you of that, nor for the people of Israel. So that's important. Jewish people should be a little bit more proud of the fact that we have an orator and a skilled individual such as Benjamin Netanyahu to push our case forward. And we've seen the results, incidentally.